Okay, so a little bit on sustainability here. This landowner had originally talked to me about maybe removing some of the nettle and burdock from their property, which here I think he had been joking, and he kind of referenced it as a joke when I did finally come out and start looking around. Because here there's so much of it that it would take years to mitigate it naturally. Thankfully, they're not wanting to mitigate it with toxins, so that's really incredible and awesome endeavor to want to do that naturally. So I'm going to turn it around here, and I'm going to talk a little bit about sustainability. Okay, so this is a really, really huge patch. There's a lot of nettle. A lot of the tall stuff is nettle. Here, that's nettle. Back beyond that, there's some elderberry back there. Here's some giant ragweed. There's a lot of stuff in here. There's a lot of burdock. You don't see it right now, but there's some first year burdock. Here's some more burdock. A lot of hemp nettle. Oh, there's a little bit of goldenrod I see back there in the yellow. But in any case, I wanted to talk about this a little bit because there are all sorts of ways that we look at plant sustainability. And I felt like this was a perfect opportunity to have that discussion. So, as we talk about that sustainability factor, nettles are invasive. Burdock is definitely invasive. The hemp nettle definitely likes to take over areas and finds itself lots of homes. It's very abundant. When we've got the ragweeds, there we go. When we've got the ragweeds, they can be quite abundant. By the way, Sam Thayer or Alan Burgo, one of those two, make references to eating giant ragweed. I don't remember what I read, but it's in one of their books, and I'll be trying that at some point. But I digress. So back to sustainability. So some people are very anti removing a plant from where it's growing. And then on the opposite side of things, we have some people who are very anti allowing anything invasive to live and or thrive. So when especially if you're foraging out on people's private property, the idea is to be respectful to the wishes of the landowner. That is very important. If this was a smaller patch and they really truly just wanted it gone, like say it was growing in small patches around their property, what I had in mind was to come in and to start taking those seeds that I talked about in a video. Again, once it gets to this stage, we're not going to be consuming the leaves anymore or using the leaves anymore, but we are going to be using those seeds. Hopefully, I'll do a video at home processing those. But so that would be my first plan of action if somebody was asking me to truly remove this from their property, or at least bring it down to a more controllable scale, would be to harvest as many seeds as I possibly can. You can make things with those seeds. You can use them as a food seasoning. So I like to put them in different seasonings. You can also tincture those seeds. Again, they're really great adrenal rebuilders. So then the next step would be harvesting the roots. So getting down there and harvesting the roots of the nettle. That would be obviously pulling up that portion, and it can't grow back in that spot. and then harvesting the greens and roots in the spring. And then over time, you really can bring down a patch of nettle. I had actually done that by accident on my previous property. Where I lived, there were a lot of invasive medicinals, and there were so many invasives out there that I really just harvested freely from them, rather than, I didn't try to get rid of them per se, and I also didn't apply the same foraging rules that we do to, say, native species, where you want to be a lot more careful and cognizant. And nettles are so prolific that I actually had never experienced reducing the size of a nettles colony before. And I had harvested a lot of seed one year, and I did see quite a reduction in that colony the following years. And I still harvest out over there because thankfully the new landowners allow me to come out there, which is a massive blessing. And so that's just some ideas for natural ways to control some of these invasive species, especially ones that are medicinal, and we can, it's getting super windy, and we can utilize them for the benefit of our own selves, for our families, and for our communities. So along those lines too, it's important when we do desire to be healers, herbalists, etc., that we consider the community at large and think of ways to make sure we're giving back to the peoples around us. So just some ideas for mitigation of large stands of some of these invasive species, like nettle. I would do that with burdock as well. And similar for the hemp nettle here. Now, burdock, the seeds are also medicinal. It's probably not a medicine I'll get into, but just super excited to be out here harvesting.